Hello everybody and welcome to this special news feature. I thought we'd take a look back at some different stories throughout the cycling world and bring some context to it and ask some deep and downright dirty questions. The question for this video isn't actually that dirty. See, someone left a comment on a video of mine from 2020 and it got me thinking. It was the video where, well, it's when this happened.
Okay, Mark Cavendish, I can see it, and it was a really hard day for you. I see you're getting emotional. How was your day?
Perhaps the last race of my career.
Do you really think this is your last race?
Maybe, yeah.
And in the news show, I reported that potentially that could be Mark Cavendish's final year. He could be hanging up his cleats, he could be done. So how did Mark Cavendish go from this
Perhaps the last race of my career.
to this?
Back at the Tour de France, 9 months after it looked as though he might be having to retire without a team.
Well, in this video, hopefully, I'll be able to answer that question. Make sure if you're enjoying this content, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you've not done already. But without further ado, let's get on with the video. Now, in my opinion, the first step in what is considered one of the greatest comebacks of all time is Mark Cavendish finally getting over his Epstein-Barr virus. The virus almost put an early end to his career back in 2017.
I'm doing everything I can do, but what I know works to get me good, I wasn't getting good. In fact, I was getting worse.
Now, Cavendish was diagnosed with Epstein-Barr virus in April of 2017 after experiencing unexplained fatigue during training, whilst he was under contract riding for Dimension Data. Now, from the moment he was diagnosed, he only went on and won one race, and that was in 2018 at the Abu Dhabi Tour. It wasn't until early 2019 that he was given the all clear from the virus, and by that time, he'd joined Bahrain McLaren on a one-year deal, which saw no relevant results to write home about. For all intents and purposes, it looked like Mark Cavendish would see out his career there, and unfortunately, it looked like it was going to peter out, unlike the spark that he created when he arrived on the scene back in, 2007? It wasn't looking great for Cav. Lack of results over the past couple of years, riding with Bahrain McLaren, not really having the team that he needed around him to succeed, looking like he was potentially, for want of a better phrase, over the hill now. That was until he went, as he described it, going back home.
Oh, it's incredible to be back in the Wolfpack. I missed it. I was always a little bit jealous, I remember the good times I had here, and always, don't get me wrong, I had good times in my other teams, but there was something missing, I was always super happy here.
Back in 2021, he signed for De Koning Quick-Step and joined a team with the likes of Tim de Klerk, Mikhail Morkov, Zdeněk Stybar, Yves Lampaert, Julien Alaphilippe, a roster all capable of supporting Cavendish in a lead-out. And to be fair, it didn't take him long to get back to winning ways. An early year showing in the Tour of Turkey saw Cavendish take 4 sprint victories, and that caused a little excitement amongst fans. I'm not going to lie, even I was a little bit buoyed by this success, but the Tour of the Turkey, early season, without the massive big sprinters there peaking, is a long way from the Tour de France, where everyone arrives in the best possible shape, ready to fight for stage victories. Oh yeah, and Mark Cavendish wasn't even going to go to the Tour de France, was he?
For his first ever stage win on the Tour de France, he tried previously, this time he would deliver. Ewan Sagan, and with his first ever stage win in the Tour, Sam Bennett completing the set of all Grand Tour stages.
Right up until the middle of June, Sam Bennett was supposed to be going to the Tour de France. Sam Bennett was supposed to be the talisman for that sprint lead-out train, and, he deserved it. He was one of the fastest guys in the world at the time. So Cav wasn't even going to the Tour de France at that point. And then lo and behold, a few days later, De Koning Quick-Step announced the team, and look who's there, the one and only Mark Cavendish. Unfortunately, Sam Bennett had ended up having a knee injury. Whether this was some Nancy Kerrigan, Tonya Harding style injury, who knows? I don't think so, just for just so there's no one coming to sue us. I don't think that's the case at all. So Bennett was out, Cavendish was in, but come on, let's be honest with the likes of Mathieu van der Poel, Kees Bol, Michael Matthews, Peter Sagan, Andre Greipel, and of course the hot favourite going into the Tour de France for any sprint victory and that green jersey was probably Caleb Ewan. So it's fair to say that Mark Cavendish wasn't best prepared for this year's Tour de France. Planning his year out, surely he looked to the Tour de France and wanted to compete at the Tour de France, but when the likes of Sam Bennett are on the form that they're on, with all due respect to Mark Cavendish, probably the GOAT, in my opinion, in terms of sprinters, the GOAT, end of. Looking at things and realising that probably Sam Bennett was in better form. Sam Bennett was more likely to win those sprint victories for Deceuninck Quick-Step than Cavendish. I think with the Epstein-Barr, the knock of confidence, potentially, if they were both on the same form, you'd have still gone with Bennett, knowing that Bennett was younger, maybe a little more fearless, and certainly his results spoke for themselves over the past couple of years compared to Cavs. However, Sam Bennett ended up getting an injury, which opened the door for Mark Cavendish. Mark Cavendish grabbed hold of that handle of that door and yanked it open and walked straight through it. But even then, even when it was announced that he was going to be going to the Tour de France, nobody, and I mean nobody, maybe apart from Mark Cavendish and his close family and friends, thought that Cav could go there and do something. Like I said, Caleb Ewan was there as favourite, looked like he was going to just scoop everything up. And here's another reason why I think Mark Cavendish managed to go from zero to hero. And that was, of course, whether you like it or not, the luck of the draw in Caleb Ewan coming down with Peter Sagan. Stage 3, Tour de France 2021 was a crash fest. It was a bit manky, it was a bit dirty, it was a bit just, yeah, there was a lot of nerves in the peloton during this stage. We had a lot of crashes prior to it. And then coming into the sprint finish, we had Alpecin Fenix leading out Tim Merlier, going for the sprint victory. Peter Sagan on his wheel, and just behind him you can see Nasser Bouhanni, and right next to Sagan was Caleb Ewan, who came down in a massive heap when him and Sagan's wheels and handlebars got caught up, leaving Tim Merlier to take that sprint victory. But as you can see in that, one person who isn't there, Mark Cavendish. Mark Cavendish finished this stage 168th. Granted, it was a lumpy old affair, this one. Not a straight up 100% definitive bunch sprint by any stretch of the imagination, but with crashes prior to the final few K, it meant that Cavendish was just nowhere to be seen. But even with the bad luck that he had, you look at the rest of the riders who were fighting out for that sprint. If he was on the form of potentially winning, then there was no reason why he shouldn't have been there. So to not see him there, you kind of get the idea that Cav's he's gonna be there or thereabouts, but he's not going to take a victory at this year's Tour de France. Not a chance. That was until the following day. Cavendish not only won stage 4, he won stage 6, he won stage 10, and he won stage 13. And on stage 13, in that green jersey, not only did he take his 4th stage win at the 2021 Tour de France, he also equalled Eddie Merckx's stage win record. And here's another reason why I think Mark Cavendish was able to take those victories, and that's his team. Like he said, when he joined back with Deceuninck Quick-Step, it felt like it was coming home. He had a team around him that were just built differently. It certainly wasn't the heights of what we saw with HTC Columbia, High Road, when he had the likes of Hincapie, Mark Renshaw, and the rest of the lead-out train, when it was just a lead-out train. Here, he had a slightly smaller one, but I don't think he needed anyone else but Michael Murkoff. Like, Murkoff was just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Sometimes finishing in the top 5 after he'd led out Mark Cavendish to the victory as well. So Cavendish had everything he needed to take those victories, and he pulled on every ounce of of experience that he'd accumulated from all the years of taking victories, being involved in sprints with the likes of Greipel and Henrik Hausler and all the other ones that I can't quite remember because it's bloody years ago now. When you think about it, Cavendish has been in that professional peloton since around 2007. It's a long old time. But hey, feel free to leave your comments down below. Biggest rivalry between Cavendish and who? Let me know down below. But yeah, that team of Deceuninck Quickstep did everything they could. They got behind their rider and they knew whether they led him out in a full train or they only had a few riders around him, or even if he was on his own. With the form he was on and the fact that we'd lost Caleb Ewan, which was, again, one of those big factors. You can only race the people that are in the race, and if Caleb Ewan's not there, then you can't race against him. You've got Peter Sagan, who'd got beat up a little bit. Tim Malia was on great form. But Cavendish showed why Cavendish is Cavendish, by being all Cavendish and just Cavendishing all over them. So by equaling Eddie Merckx's record of stage wins on stage 13, it allowed him to potentially go onto the Champs-Élysées, win that sprint, and then put his name on the top of that list of all-time stage wins. After what had happened, it seemed like it was the only thing that was going to happen. And that was the only thing missing from that 2021 Tour de France for Mark Cavendish. But I think if you'd have said to him right at the start, you can have one stage victory, he would have ripped your hand off at that. To take the green jersey, 4 stage victories, equaling Merckx's record. And I think because Cav has such an understanding of the nuance of cycling and the history of cycling, I think the fact that he's on those stage wins with Eddie Merckx makes it better for him. I don't think he would have as everybody wants the record, but I think he'll enjoy sitting there with the legend that is Eddie Merckx, knowing that he is, you know, one of the greatest, if not the greatest sprinters of all time. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my opinion as to how... And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my opinion on how Mark Cavendish went from hero... And that, ladies and gentlemen, is just my opinion on how Mark Cavendish went from 0 to hero in a very short space of time. And it is still, and I think will ever be, and tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, the greatest comeback in sporting history. Leave your comments down below. Let me know, and we'll see you on the next video.